The Veltris corridor had been quiet for 3,000 years. It was a trade route at the edge of mapped space, and the Marathi collective had controlled it since before most species learned to build fire. Their patrol fleets moved through the corridor like shadows, watching everything, missing nothing. In all their long history, they had never met a species they could not understand, predict, or, if necessary, defeat. Commander Oris stood on the bridge of his flagship, the voice of ages. He was old for a Marathi, with gray patches spreading across his green shell, and he had served in the patrol fleet for 60 years. He had seen many things in that time. He had watched young species take their first steps into space. He had negotiated with traders and scientists and explorers. He had fought pirates and won every battle without losing a single ship. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. "Commander," said Subcommander Veth, his second in command, "our long-range sensors have detected something entering the corridor." Oris looked at the display screen. There was a shape there far away moving slowly toward them. "What is it? A trading vessel? A station?" Veth's antennae twitched with confusion. "We are not certain, Commander. The sensors are having difficulty measuring it." "Difficulty?" Oris frowned. Marathi sensors were the finest in the galaxy. They could detect a shuttle from 10,000 kilometers away. They could count the crew members on a ship before it even knew it was being watched. "Explain." "The object is very large, Commander. At first, we thought it was an asteroid. Then we thought it was a space station. But it is moving under its own power and it is armed." Oris felt something he had not felt in a very long time. It was a cold feeling like ice forming in his chest. "Show me." The display screen changed. The image grew larger as the sensors focused on the distant object, and then Oris understood why his crew was confused. It was a ship, a single ship, and it was enormous. The Marathi cruisers in his patrol fleet were each 500 meters long. They were considered large by galactic standards. This ship was almost 5 kilometers long. It was 10 times the size of anything Oris had ever seen. Its hull was dark gray, covered with weapon batteries and sensor arrays and structures that Oris could not identify. It moved through space like a mountain that had learned to swim. "What species built this?" Oris asked. His voice was quiet. "Unknown, Commander. It does not match any ship design in our database. The species is not registered with the Galactic Council." Oris stared at the image. In 60 years, he had never seen an unregistered species with technology like this. Young species built small ships. They made mistakes. They learned slowly. They did not build vessels that made Marathi cruisers look like toys. "How many crew members?" he asked. "We cannot tell, Commander. Our sensors cannot penetrate the hull." That cold feeling in his chest grew stronger. Marathi sensors could penetrate anything. That was what he had always believed. But this ship was different. This ship was impossible. "Form a defensive perimeter," Oris ordered. "All 12 cruisers, and send a message to Ambassador Telvak. Tell him we need him here immediately." The Marathi fleet spread out, forming a wall of ships between the unknown vessel and the trade stations beyond. They activated their weapons and raised their shields. They were ready for battle. But the giant ship did not attack. It simply continued forward, slow and steady, until it was close enough that Oris could see it clearly through the observation window. Up close, it was even more terrifying. He could see the weapon batteries now, hundreds of them, each one larger than his own ship's main gun. He could see fighter bays and missile tubes and things that looked like they could crack a planet in half. And then the ship spoke. The message came through on all frequencies, broadcast in simple mathematical code. It was the universal greeting, the one that all spacefaring species used to say hello to strangers. The message was peaceful. It was friendly. It said, "We come in peace. We wish to talk." Oris did not feel peaceful. He felt like a small animal that had just met a very large predator. On the bridge of the HSS Goliath, Admiral Unipark watched the alien fleet on her display screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She held a cup of coffee in her hand, and she sipped it slowly as she studied the alien ships. 12 cruisers, said Captain Minu Beak, her tactical officer. He was tall and serious, with a soldier's posture and a scientist's careful eyes. They have formed a defensive line. Their weapons are active, but they have not targeted us. They are scared, said Lieutenant Hana Choi, the communications specialist. She was young, with a quick smile and a gift for languages. I can see it in their formation. They do not know what to do. Admiral Park nodded. She had expected this. The Goliath was humanity's first Titan-class warship, and it was designed to be impressive. It was designed to make other species think twice before starting a fight. It was designed to end wars before they began. But Admiral Park did not want to frighten these aliens. She wanted to meet them. She wanted to learn about them. Humanity had been alone in their corner of the galaxy for 200 years, and they were ready to make friends. Hana, she said, send them a message. Tell them we are peaceful explorers. Tell them we would like to talk. Hana nodded and began working at her console. The message went out, translated into the same mathematical code the aliens had used. For a long moment there was silence. The alien fleet did not move. The Goliath waited. Then finally a response came. It was in the aliens' own language, but Hana's computers translated it quickly. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Oris of the Marathi Collective. You have entered controlled space. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Admiral Park smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a long time for this moment. Tell them, she said, that we are the HSS Goliath, representing the United Earth Government. Tell them we have traveled very far to meet our neighbors, and tell them we would be honored to speak with them face to face. She looked out the observation window at the small alien ships, floating in formation like nervous fish around a whale. They had no idea what humanity was. They had no idea what the Goliath could do, and they had no idea that everything was about to change. They look nervous, Admiral Park said. She took another sip of her coffee. Let them know we come in peace. No need to scare them more than we already have. Captain Beak allowed himself a small smile. I think, Admiral, that it may be too late for that. Out in the darkness of space, the Goliath waited. It was patient. It had come a long way, and it was not in any hurry. The stars watched in silence as two species met for the first time, one ancient and wise, the other young and powerful. The galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador Telvac arrived 6 hours later on a fast transport ship from the nearest station. He was one of the oldest and most respected diplomats in the Marathi Collective, with a shell that had turned almost completely gray with age. He had negotiated treaties with 47 different species. He had prevented wars and ended conflicts and built alliances that lasted centuries. But when he saw the human ship on his display screen, he felt something he had not felt since he was very young. He felt small. That is a single vessel, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Ambassador, said Commander Oris. They stood together on the bridge of the Voice of Ages, watching the Goliath through the observation window. It is 4.7 kilometers long. It carries weapons we cannot identify, and its hull is made of a material our sensors cannot penetrate. Telvac was quiet for a long moment. In all his years of service, he had learned one important truth. Power was the only thing that truly mattered in the galaxy. Species with power survived. Species without power did not. And this ship represented more power than he had ever seen in one place. Have they made any aggressive moves? He asked. No, they have been peaceful. They say they want to talk. Then we will talk. Telvac straightened his robes. I will go to their ship myself. Oris looked alarmed. Ambassador, we do not know anything about these creatures. It could be dangerous. Everything is dangerous, Commander, but we cannot hide from them forever. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done so already. The fact that they have not tells me something important. What does it tell you? Telvac looked at the massive ship floating in the darkness. It tells me they are civilized, and civilized species can be reasoned with. He sent a message to the human ship requesting permission to board. The response came quickly. The humans agreed. They said they would send a shuttle to collect him. An hour later, Telvac stood in the docking bay of the Voice of Ages with Sub-Commander Veth and 2 guards. They watched as a small human shuttle approached, moving smoothly through space. It was a simple vessel, nothing impressive, but it moved with a precision that spoke of excellent engineering. The shuttle landed, and a door opened. A human female stepped out. She was small, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to smile even when her mouth did not. She wore a uniform of dark blue, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who was not afraid. "Ambassador Telvac," she said, "I am Dr. Nara O. I am a linguist and cultural specialist. Welcome. Admiral Park is looking forward to meeting you." Telvac studied her carefully. She was smaller than he had expected. Humans, it seemed, were not a large species, but he had learned long ago that size meant nothing. The most dangerous creatures were often the smallest. "Thank you, Dr. O," he said. "I am honored to be here." They boarded the shuttle, and it lifted off, flying toward the Goliath. As they approached, Telvac looked out the window and felt his breath catch in his throat. The ship was even larger up close. He could see every detail now, every weapon battery and sensor array and armored plate. He counted the gun turrets as they passed and stopped when he reached 40. There were hundreds more. Each one was the size of a Marathi cruiser. "Your ship is very impressive," he said carefully. Dr. O smiled. "The Goliath is our first Titan-class vessel. It took us 30 years to build." 30 years. Veth spoke for the first time, his voice sharp with disbelief. "That is impossible. A ship this size would take centuries." "Humans work quickly when we are motivated," Dr. O said. There was something in her voice, a hint of old pain. "We had reasons to be motivated." The shuttle entered a docking bay, and Telvac stepped out into a world he could not have imagined. The bay was enormous, large enough to hold a dozen Marathi cruisers. But that was not what surprised him. What surprised him was what he saw beyond the bay doors. There were trees, living trees growing in soil, reaching toward a ceiling that glowed with artificial sunlight. There were paths made of stone, winding between gardens filled with flowers. There were benches where humans sat and talked, and fountains that sparkled with clean water. It was a park, inside a warship. "This way, please," Dr. O said. She led them through the park, past families walking together, past children playing on grass, past old people sitting in the sun. The air smelled of flowers and fresh earth. Somewhere a bird was singing. Telvac had seen many strange things in his life. He had visited worlds of ice and worlds of fire. He had met species that lived in clouds and species that lived in stone, but he had never seen anything like this. "Why is there a garden on a warship?" he asked. Dr. O looked at him with those smiling eyes. "The Goliath is not just a warship, Ambassador. It is a city. 80,000 people live here. They work here. They raise families here. We believe that even soldiers deserve beauty." They walked through corridors that were wide and bright, past schools where children learned mathematics and history, past hospitals and restaurants and theaters. Telvac saw old men playing games at tables and young couples walking hand in hand. He saw a woman teaching a class of children how to paint. This was not what he had expected. He had expected cold metal and harsh lights and soldiers everywhere. He had expected a weapon. Instead, he had found a home. They reached a large observation deck, where Admiral Unipark was waiting. She was smaller than Dr. O, with short hair and calm, patient eyes. She wore the same dark blue uniform, with medals on her chest that Telvac did not recognize. Ambassador Telvac, she said, bowing slightly. Thank you for coming. I have been looking forward to meeting you. Telvac returned the bow. Admiral Park, your ship is remarkable. I have never seen anything like it. The Goliath is humanity's greatest achievement, Park said, but it is not a weapon of conquest. It is a guardian, a protector. A protector against what? Park was quiet for a moment. Then she said, against everything, against anyone who would threaten our people, against the darkness of space, against the fear of being alone. Telvac considered this. Your species is young. Our records show that you have only been spacefaring for 200 years. How did you build something like this so quickly? Park looked out the window at the stars. We learned fast because we had to. Our history taught us that the universe is not kind. The weak do not survive. We decided a long time ago that we would never be weak again. There was pain in her voice, old and deep. Telvac recognized it. It was the pain of a species that had suffered greatly and never forgotten. Your people have known war, he said. It was not a question. Yes, more than you can imagine, but we have also known peace. We have learned that strength without wisdom is dangerous. That is why we built the Goliath this way. We brought our families with us. We brought our gardens and our schools. We wanted to remember what we are fighting for. Dr. O stepped forward. Would you like to see more, Ambassador? We would be happy to show you our ship. Telvac nodded. He wanted to understand these humans. He wanted to know why they built their warships like cities. He wanted to know what they had suffered that made them this way. As they walked, they passed through an observation garden filled with flowers from 100 different worlds. Children ran through the paths, laughing and playing. A young woman sat on a bench, talking to someone on a small screen. A baby cried somewhere, and a father's voice sang a gentle song. Telvac stopped. He watched the children play. He watched the young mother smile at her baby. Why would you bring families to a warship? He asked. Dr. O stood beside him. She watched the children too, and there was something gentle in her eyes. Because, Ambassador, she said softly, we do not go to war to die. We go to war to come home. Telvac was silent. He looked at the gardens, at the children, at the sunlight falling through the glass, and for the first time in many centuries he felt hope. Perhaps these humans, these young, powerful creatures, were not enemies. Perhaps they were something else entirely. Perhaps they were exactly what the galaxy needed. Ambassador Telvac had spent 3 days aboard the Goliath. He had walked its corridors and visited its schools. He had eaten in its restaurants and watched its people live their lives. But he still did not understand these humans. He did not understand how a species so young could build something so powerful. He did not understand why they carried such sadness in their eyes. On the 4th day, he asked to learn more about their history. Admiral Park agreed. She assigned a woman named Subin Lim to be his guide. Subin was the ship's historian, a quiet woman with gray hair and gentle hands. She smiled often, but there was weight in her smile, as if she carried heavy memories. I will show you our memorial hall, Subin said. It is the best place to understand who we are. She led Telvac and Sub-Commander Veth through the ship, past the gardens and the schools, past the living areas where families made their homes. They walked for a long time, deep into the heart of the Goliath, until they reached a massive door made of dark metal. This is a sacred place for us, Subin said. Please be respectful. The doors opened and Telvac stepped inside. He stopped immediately, his breath caught in his throat. The memorial hall was enormous. It was a vast chamber that stretched upward for hundreds of meters, and every wall was covered with names. Millions of names, carved into stone, lit by soft golden light. The names went up and up, disappearing into the shadows above. What is this place? Veth whispered. These are the names of our dead, Subin said. Her voice was soft, almost a prayer. Every human who died in war, every soldier who fell, every civilian who was lost. We carry them with us so we never forget. Telvek walked slowly along the wall. The names were endless. He saw dates that went back centuries, to times when humans had not yet left their home world. He saw names from wars he did not recognize, conflicts that had happened long before humanity reached the stars. "How many wars have you fought?" he asked. Subin was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Too many. We fought each other for thousands of years. We killed each other over land, over ideas, over gods. We built weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single moment. We came very close to ending ourselves." Telvek stared at her. The Marathi had fought wars in their past, but nothing like this. They had never built weapons that could destroy cities. They had never come close to killing themselves. "You are a violent species," he said. He did not mean it as an insult. It was simply a fact. "We were," Subin agreed. "Perhaps we still are. We carry that fire inside us, always burning, but we learned to control it. We learned to direct it outward, to protect instead of destroy." She led him deeper into the hall, to a section where the names were fewer but the dates were more recent. "This is the wall of the final war. 250 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself completely. Every nation on Earth fought against every other. Billions died. Our home world was left in ruins." Telvek looked at the names. There were so many lives lost. He tried to imagine the suffering, the pain, the grief. It was almost too much to hold in his mind. "How did you survive?" he asked. "We made a choice," Subin said. "The survivors looked at what we had done, and they decided it would never happen again. They built a new government, a single government for all of humanity. They ended the old conflicts. They turned our weapons away from each other and toward the stars." "And the Goliath?" "The Goliath is the result of that choice. We built it to protect ourselves from any threat. We built it so that no species would ever try to subjugate us. We built it as a promise." She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much history. "We will never be victims again." A door opened behind them and a man entered the hall. He was tall and broad, with scars on his face and hands that spoke of many battles. He wore a military uniform, and he moved with the careful grace of a trained fighter. This was Master Sergeant Dohun Ryu, commander of the Goliath's marine forces. "Ambassador," he said, nodding respectfully. "Historian Lim, I was told you were here." "Master Sergeant Ryu," Subin said. "I was showing our guests the memorial hall." Dohun looked at the walls of names. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or pride. It was difficult to tell. "Do you have questions, Ambassador?" he asked. Telvek had many questions, but one burned brighter than the others. "Why do you fight?" he asked. "If you have known so much war, so much death, why do you continue to build warships? Why do you not simply seek peace?" Dohun was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Come with me, I will show you." He led them out of the memorial hall and through more corridors, until they reached the marine barracks. It was a large area filled with sleeping quarters and training rooms and common spaces. Soldiers moved through the halls, some in uniform, some in casual clothes. But it was not what Telvek expected. The barracks did not feel cold or harsh. There were pictures on the walls, personal items in the rooms. In one common area, a group of soldiers was watching a comedy show and laughing together. In another, a young woman was talking to a child on a video screen. "Mommy will be home soon," the woman was saying. "Be good for Grandma, okay? I love you." Telvek watched her. She was a soldier trained to kill, but her voice was soft and her eyes were full of love. Dohun stood beside him. "That is Private Jiyoung Shin. She has a daughter who is 5 years old. She joined the Marines because she wants to protect her family." He pointed to another soldier, a young man who was tending to small plants in tiny pots. "That is Corporal Minyi Kwon. He grows tomatoes in his quarters. He says it reminds him of his grandfather's garden back on Earth." Telvek looked around the barracks. Everywhere he looked, he saw not warriors but people. people with families and hobbies and dreams, people who laughed and loved and feared. "We fight so they do not have to," Dohan said. His voice was quiet but firm. "Every soldier on this ship has someone they love, someone they want to protect. We do not fight because we enjoy war. We fight because we know what happens when good people do not stand up against evil." He looked at Telvac with eyes that had seen death and horror, and still chosen to hope. "The universe is dangerous, Ambassador. There are species out there who would enslave us, destroy us, take everything we have built. We will not let that happen, not to our families, not to our children, not to anyone." Telvac understood then. He understood why the humans built their warships like cities. He understood why they carried their families with them into the darkness. He understood the weight they carried and the fire that burned inside them. They were protectors. They were guardians. They had learned through centuries of suffering that power without love was meaningless, and love without power was helpless. So they had built something that had both. "You are a remarkable species," Telvac said. Dohan shook his head. "We are a broken species, Ambassador. We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused terrible suffering, but we are trying to be better. That is all any of us can do." Later that day, Telvac returned to his quarters on the Marathi flagship. He sat alone in the darkness, thinking about everything he had seen. The gardens and the schools, the memorial hall with its millions of names, the soldiers with their families and their flowers. He had come to this meeting expecting to find enemies. Instead, he had found something else entirely. He had found a species that had stared into the abyss of its own darkness and chosen to become light. He did not know what the future would bring. He did not know if humans and Marathi would become allies or enemies. But he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same. The attack came without warning. One moment, the Veltris corridor was peaceful. The Marathi fleet floated in formation near the Goliath, and diplomats on both sides were discussing treaties and trade agreements. The next moment, 40 warships dropped out of hyperspace, and the darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Commander Oris saw them first on his sensors. The ships were dark and angular, covered with spikes and scars from many battles. He recognized them immediately. The Keithrani raiders. "All ships raise shields," he shouted, but it was already too late. The Keithrani opened fire before the Marathi could react. Their weapons were crude but powerful, designed for one purpose: destruction. 3 Marathi cruisers exploded in the first 10 seconds, their crews dying without even knowing what had happened. 2 more took heavy damage, their shields failing, their hulls burning. On the Keithrani flagship, Warlord Draven watched the chaos with a cruel smile. He was a massive creature, covered in dark scales, with eyes that glowed red in the dim light of his bridge. He had commanded the Keithrani raiders for 30 years, and he had never met an enemy he could not break. "Target the large ship," he ordered. "The one from the unknown species. Capture it if possible, if not destroy it." His crew obeyed. 20 Keithrani ships turned their weapons toward the Goliath and fired. On the Goliath's bridge, Admiral Unipark watched the attack unfold on her display screen. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. Around her, officers shouted reports and warnings, but she did not panic. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Jisuhan, her weapons officer, "the unknown vessels have opened fire. They are targeting both the Marathi fleet and us." "I can see that." Park studied the enemy ships. They were fast and aggressive, but their weapons were weak compared to the Goliath's armor. Their missiles bounced off the hull without leaving a scratch. "Who are they?" "Sensors identify them as Keithrani raiders," said Dr. Nara O. "They are a pirate faction. They attack trade routes and steal cargo. They are considered one of the most dangerous groups in this sector." Dangerous? Park considered the word. On her screen, she watched another Marathi cruiser explode. The aliens who had welcomed her so graciously were dying. Their ships were burning. Their crews were screaming for help. "Admiral," said Captain Minubeak, "the Marathi are taking heavy casualties. Their shields are failing. If we do not intervene, they will be destroyed." Park nodded. She had seen enough. "All hands," she said, and her voice carried throughout the ship, "battle stations. Jisoo, weapons free. Protect the Marathi." The Goliath came alive. Deep in the ship, thousands of crew members ran to their posts. Pilots sprinted to their fighters. Gunners activated their weapons. Engineers monitored power systems and prepared for damage control. In the residential areas, families gathered in shelters, holding each other tight. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jisoo Hand smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of someone who had been trained for this moment their entire life. "All weapons online," she said. "Targets acquired." "Fire," said Admiral Park. The Goliath's main battery spoke. Each shot was a beam of pure energy, bright as a star, hot as the heart of a sun. The beams crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. They struck the Keithrani vessels with perfect accuracy. 5 ships simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris. One moment they were there and the next they were gone, erased from the universe as if they had never been. Warlord Draven stared at his display screen. His red eyes went wide. He had seen many weapons in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. "What is that thing?" he whispered. But the Goliath was not finished. From the ship's fighter bays, squadrons of small craft launched into space. They were fast, faster than anything the Keithrani had ever seen. They moved in perfect formation, weaving between enemy ships like dancers in a deadly ballet. Ensign Tiho Yoon led the first squadron. He was young, just 22 years old, and this was his first real combat mission. But his hands were steady on the controls, and his eyes were sharp. "All fighters target their engines," he said through his radio. "Disable, do not destroy. The Admiral wants prisoners." His squadron obeyed. They swept through the Keithrani fleet like a storm, their weapons striking with surgical precision. One by one, the raider ships went dark, their engines failing, their power systems dying. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 22 Keithrani ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 18 were drifting helplessly in space, their weapons offline, their crews trapped and terrified. The Goliath had not suffered a single hull breach. Its shields had barely flickered. On the Marathi flagship Voice of Ages, Commander Oris stared at his damaged bridge. Half his consoles were dark. His hull was burning in 3 places. He had lost 6 ships and hundreds of crew members. But he was alive. The Goliath had saved them. "Commander," said Subcommander Veth, "human shuttles are approaching. They say they are sending medical teams." Oris watched the small craft emerge from the Goliath's bays. They flew to the damaged Marathi ships and began docking, their crews rushing aboard to help the wounded. "They are saving us," Veth said. His voice was full of wonder. "They could have let us die. They could have taken this opportunity to destroy us both, but they are saving us instead." Oris did not answer. He was too busy watching the impossible unfold. On the Keithrani flagship, Warlord Draven sat in his captain's chair, surrounded by darkness. His engines were dead. His weapons were silent. His crew was frightened, huddling in the corners like children. A communication signal came through. Draven activated it with shaking hands. Admiral Unipark's face appeared on his screen. She did not look angry. She did not look triumphant. She looked tired and sad. "Warlord Draven," she said, "your ships are disabled. Your weapons are offline. You have 2 choices. You can surrender and we will treat your crews fairly, or you can continue to fight and we will destroy you completely." Draven stared at her. His pride screamed at him to fight, to die with honor, to never surrender to anyone. But his pride could not bring back the ships he had lost. His pride could not restart his engines or reload his weapons. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to leave," Park said. "Take your surviving ships and go. Never return to this corridor. Do not attack any vessel under humanity's protection. If you do, we will find you and we will finish what we started today. Do you understand?" Draven understood. He understood that he was beaten, completely and utterly. He understood that this human woman could kill him with a single command, but was choosing not to. "I understand," he said. "Good," Park's voice softened slightly. "Learn from this, warlord. There are better ways to live than piracy. Perhaps it is time to find them." The screen went dark. Draven sat in silence for a long moment. Then slowly, he ordered his remaining ships to retreat. As the Keithrani fleet limped away into hyperspace, Commander Oris stood on his damaged bridge and watched the human medical teams work. They moved quickly and efficiently, treating Marathi wounded with the same care they would give their own people. A young human medic approached a Marathi officer who was badly burned. The officer flinched away, afraid. "It is okay," the medic said gently. "I am here to help, just stay still." He treated the burns carefully, speaking softly the entire time, and when he was finished, the Marathi officer looked at him with amazement. "Why?" the officer asked. "Why did you save us?" The medic smiled. "Because that is what we do." Oris turned to Veth. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "They could have conquered us," he said. "They could have watched us die and taken whatever they wanted from the wreckage. Instead, they fought for us. They bled for us." He looked at the Goliath, floating peacefully among the wreckage of battle, its lights glowing warmly against the darkness of space. "They are saving us instead." Veth had no response. There was nothing to say. Everything they had believed about power and strength and survival was changing before their eyes. The humans were not conquerors. They were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were protectors. And for the first time in his long life, Commander Oris felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt hope. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within hours of the battle in the Veltris corridor, every major species knew what had happened. They had seen the footage captured by Marathi sensors, footage that showed a ship larger than any ever built destroying an entire pirate fleet in minutes. They had seen the human fighters moving faster than anything they had ever witnessed. They had seen the impossible become real. The footage was watched trillions of times. It was analyzed by military experts and studied by scientists. It was discussed in council chambers and debated in universities. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a question. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? What did they want? And most importantly, were they a threat? 3 months after the battle, the Galactic Council convened a special assembly on the Marathi homeworld. Representatives from dozens of species traveled across the stars to attend. Some came because they were curious. Some came because they were frightened. Some came because they wanted to see these humans for themselves. The assembly hall was enormous, a vast chamber of white stone and golden light, with seats arranged in rising circles around a central platform. Council Speaker Ethan, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, stood at the center, watching the delegates arrive. He had led the council for 200 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed wars that killed billions and treaties that saved millions more. But he had never seen anything like the fear and wonder that filled the chamber today. The humans arrived last. There were only 3 of them. Ambassador Wujin Seo walked in front, a tall man with kind eyes and a calm presence. Behind him came 2 guards in formal military uniforms, their faces serious but not threatening. The chamber fell silent as they entered. Every eye watched them. Every breath was held. Ambassador Seo walked to the center of the platform. He looked around at the assembled delegates, meeting their eyes one by one. He did not seem nervous. He did not seem aggressive. He seemed, more than anything, hopeful. "Council Speaker Ethan," he said, bowing respectfully. "Thank you for inviting us. Humanity is honored to address this assembly." Ethan nodded. "Ambassador CEO, the galaxy has many questions about your species. We have seen what your warship can do. We have seen its power. Many here are concerned about what that power means for the future." "I understand," CEO said, "and I'm here to answer those concerns." He turned to face the assembly. When he spoke, his voice was steady and sincere. "My name is Woojin CEO. I represent the United Earth Government, the government of all humanity. We are a young species. We have only traveled among the stars for 200 years, but we have learned much in that time about ourselves and about the universe." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We built the Titan-class warship because we are afraid. We are afraid because we know our history. Humanity has suffered greatly. We have fought terrible wars. We have killed each other by the billions. We came very close to destroying ourselves completely." He looked at the delegates and there was pain in his eyes. Old pain passed down through generations. "We learned from our suffering. We learned that the weak are destroyed, that those without strength cannot protect the things they love. So we made ourselves strong. We built ships that could face any enemy. We created weapons that could defeat any threat. We did this not because we wanted to conquer, but because we never wanted to be victims again." A delegate from a species called the Vandari raised a hand. She was covered in blue feathers, and her voice was sharp and suspicious. "Your ship destroyed 22 vessels in 4 minutes, she said. "You say you are not conquerors, but that is the power of conquerors. How can we trust you?" CEO nodded respectfully. "A fair question. Let me tell you what happened after that battle." He activated a small display device, and images appeared in the air above the platform. They showed human medical teams treating wounded Marathi. They showed human engineers helping repair damaged alien ships. They showed human pilots escorting the surviving vessels to safety. "We could have watched the Marathi die," CEO said. "We could have taken whatever we wanted from the wreckage. Instead, we saved them. We fought for them. We bled for them." He looked directly at the Vandari delegate. "Power is not evil. Power is a tool. What matters is how you use it. We use our power to protect, not to destroy." Another delegate spoke, an ancient being from a species called the Thavari. His skin was like bark, and his voice crackled like old wood. "You speak of protection, but protected from what? Protected from whom?" CEO's expression softened. "Protected from anything. Protected from anyone who would harm the innocent. Protected from the darkness that exists in every corner of the galaxy." He spread his hands wide. "We did not come here to threaten you. We did not come here to demand anything. We came here because we have been alone for 200 years and we are tired of being alone. We want to know our neighbors. We want to learn from you and share with you. We want to build something better together." Council Speaker Ethan stepped forward. His silver face was difficult to read, but his voice was thoughtful. "What does humanity want from the galaxy, Ambassador CEO? What are you truly seeking?" CEO smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and sincere. "Friends," he said, "trade, knowledge, the chance to explore and discover and grow. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves." He looked around the chamber, at the dozens of species watching him with their strange eyes and alien faces. "And we want to offer something in return. If you are ever in danger, if you ever face an enemy you cannot defeat alone, call us. We will come. We will stand beside you. We will fight for you." His voice grew stronger. "That is our promise. That is what humanity offers. Not conquest but protection. Not empire but alliance. Not fear but hope." The chamber was silent. The delegates looked at each other, uncertain, confused. They had expected threats and demands. They had expected the arrogance of a powerful species. Instead, they had received an offer of friendship. Then slowly, Ambassador Telvak rose from his seat. He was old and gray, his shell worn by centuries of service. He had spent 3 days aboard the Goliath. He had seen the gardens and the schools. He had seen the memorial hall with its millions of names. He had seen the soldiers with their families and their flowers. He walked to the edge of his section and placed his hand over his chest. It was the Marathi gesture of deepest respect, the gesture reserved for heroes and saviors. And he bowed. One by one, other delegates followed. The Vandari, despite her suspicions, lowered her head in acknowledgement. The Thavari creaked forward in a gesture of respect. Species after species, delegate after delegate, they rose and bowed to the human ambassador. It was not surrender. It was not submission. It was recognition. Recognition that something new had entered the galaxy, something powerful and strange and wonderful. Ambassador Seo bowed in return, honoring them all. Aboard the HSS Goliath, Admiral Unipark received the news via encrypted message. 17 species had requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Trade agreements were being drafted. Cultural exchange programs were being planned. The future was opening like a flower. She read the list of species, each name representing millions of beings who wanted to know humanity, and she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt proud. Captain Minyu Beek entered the observation deck where she stood. He looked at the message on her screen and allowed himself a small smile. "It seems we have made some friends, Admiral." "It seems we have." Park looked out the observation window at the stars stretching endlessly in every direction. 17 species. After 200 years of being alone, we finally have neighbors. "What are you thinking?" Beek asked. Park was quiet for a long moment. She thought of the wars humanity had fought and the lessons they had learned. She thought of the memorial hall and its millions of names. She thought of the children playing in the gardens, the soldiers calling their families, the doctors healing the wounded. She thought of everything humanity had suffered and everything they had become. "I am thinking," she said slowly, "that we finally have neighbors. Let us try to be good ones." Beek nodded. There was nothing more to say. The Goliath turned slowly, its massive form catching the light of distant stars. It sailed toward the edge of known space, toward new discoveries and new friendships and new challenges. It was not a conqueror. It was not a destroyer. It was a guardian, a protector, a beacon of hope in the endless darkness. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.